Don't go into the pipe. In Jeepers Creepers, we follow Derry and his sister Trish driving down a highway. Everything changes when an old truck starts aggressively chasing them, nearly forcing their car off the road. That alone should have been enough reason to get as far away as possible. But shortly afterward, they see the driver stop near an abandoned church and dump something wrapped up into a huge pipe. It looked like a body. Honestly, I would have left immediately, but not Derry. He makes the worst possible decision, going back to investigate. Even after nearly dying on the road, he still decides to crawl alone into the dark pipe. And the deeper he goes, the worse it gets. The tunnel leads to an underground chamber filled with bodies stitched into the walls in one of the movie's most disturbing scenes. The worst part is that the movie makes it obvious the entire time that this is a gigantic trap. Trish even tries convincing her brother to leave, but he keeps insisting. That pipe scene basically became the movie's trademark. A lot of people remember Derry's unbelievably dumb decision more than the monster itself. Because honestly, after that truck chase, going back to investigate was practically asking to become a victim. The box. In Saw 2, Addison Corday falls for what might be one of the most avoidable traps in the entire franchise. In the movie, a group of strangers wakes up trapped inside a house full of jigsaw traps. They're all infected by a deadly gas and must find antidotes hidden throughout the house before time runs out. The problem is that the entire place was specifically designed to test the victim's patience and desperation, and Addison clearly fails that test. While searching for a syringe containing an antidote, she finds a glass box with the object locked inside. But the trap was insanely suspicious. The box had narrow openings and hidden blades inside it, but she still sticks both hands in there anyway, which gets her killed. The most frustrating detail? There was a tape explaining exactly how the mechanism worked, and she ignores it. The situation gets even worse because the solution was ridiculously simple. The trap's key was visible on the other side of the box the entire time. She just needed to stop for a few seconds and actually look around. The whale. In The Shallows, Nancy Adams proves that even intelligent characters can make completely questionable decisions once panic kicks in. And things get worse because she literally decides to surf alone in an isolated place nobody really knows about. She's a medical student traveling to a hidden beach in Mexico while dealing with personal struggles after her mother's death. At first, the place looks like paradise. Crystal clear water, an empty beach, and perfect waves. But the movie quickly turns that beautiful scenery into a nightmare once a giant shark starts attacking anything that enters the water. After the first attack, Nancy manages to survive by staying trapped on a small rock in the middle of the ocean. And up until that point, she actually makes relatively smart decisions. The problem starts when she decides to climb onto the massive carcass of a dead whale. One tiny but important detail, the shark was circling the area specifically because of that whale. So basically, she climbed directly onto the creature's favorite meal, and it doesn't stop there. At another point, Nancy tries using whale oil and a flare to set the shark on fire. The idea sounds genius for about 3 seconds, until the movie reminds everyone they're surrounded by water. Result, she just makes the shark even more aggressive. Fake zombie. In Zombieland, we follow Columbus, a paranoid guy surviving in a zombie-controlled world by following strict survival rules. He crosses paths with Tallahassee, Wichita, and Little Rock, and the group eventually ends up inside a giant mansion in Hollywood. That already sounds strange enough, but the real surprise happens when they discover Bill Murray is still alive and hiding there. But instead of being a desperate celebrity trying to survive, Murray is basically living a normal life in the middle of the apocalypse. He disguises himself as a zombie using makeup so he can walk around the city without getting attacked. The problem is his incredibly terrible decision to prank Columbus. He pretends to be a real zombie and sneaks up behind the guy. Columbus reacts on instinct and immediately shoots him without hesitation. Honestly, this is one of the most avoidable deaths in movie history.
Is that how you say hello? Where you come from?
The dog door. In Scream, Tatum Riley manages to do something impressive. Survive several minutes fighting Ghostface, only to die in one of the most avoidable ways possible immediately afterward. The movie follows a masked killer terrorizing teenagers in the town of Woodsboro. During a party at Stu's house, Tatum goes into the garage to grab drinks while everyone else keeps partying inside, completely unaware the killer is already moving through the house. When Ghostface appears, Tatum actually handles herself pretty well at first. She throws bottles at him, tries escaping, and clearly fights harder than most slasher victims from that era. But then comes the unbelievably dumb decision. Inside the garage, she spots a tiny dog door in the automatic garage door and decides to crawl through it. The problem? The opening was ridiculously small, and the movie practically makes it obvious there was absolutely no chance she could fit through there. What's funny is that the scene became one of the franchise's most iconic deaths precisely because of how absurd the situation is. A lot of people still don't understand why she didn't just try another exit or keep fighting. After everything she did to survive, losing to a tiny dog door almost feels like a joke. Visiting the grandparents. In the visit, the kid's mother ignores so many obvious danger signs that eventually you start getting more nervous about her decisions than the movie's actual grandparents. The story follows siblings Becca and Tyler, who travel to spend a week at their grandparents' house while their mother goes on a trip. The detail is, she hadn't seen her parents in around 15 years after a massive family fight, and even so, she simply sends her children to stay with two people who had practically become strangers. No visit beforehand, no proper confirmation of who they were, and worst of all, not even a video call before the trip. Things were already wrong from the beginning. As the days pass, the children begin noticing completely bizarre behavior. The grandmother scratches walls during the night, runs through the house in terrifying ways, and behaves like someone completely out of control. Meanwhile, the grandfather has strange outbursts and becomes increasingly aggressive. And when the kids tell their mother about all this, she just treats it like old people behavior. The most frustrating scene, and the one that changes everything, happens near the ending during a video call. The kids show the grandparents on camera, and their mother finally realizes those people aren't actually her parents.
Those aren't your grandparents. Where are Nana and Pop-Up?
And a lot of viewers criticize exactly that. How did she not realize sooner? Well, simply because she chose not to see her parents. Some fans defend the idea that the character's emotional trauma created a psychological block, causing her to ignore extremely dangerous warning signs until it was too late. The tree. In Midsommar, Mark visits a bizarre cult and acts like he's just on some random college exchange trip. And honestly, the movie makes it obvious from the start that this guy isn't surviving for long. He's the kind of character where you instantly know, yeah, he's doomed. The story follows a group of American friends traveling to an isolated community deep in Sweden. At first, everything feels relatively normal. Strange food, white clothes, and people smiling way too much in an uncomfortable way. But things slowly become darker as the visitors realize the place follows extremely disturbing traditions. While everyone else starts feeling nervous, Mark continues being the annoying guy of the group. He makes jokes at terrible moments, treats everything like a game, and clearly doesn't understand the danger around him. Even after several horrifying events involving the villagers, he still spends more time flirting with local girls than trying to stay alive. But his dumbest decision comes when he decides to pee on one of the community's sacred trees. And worse, he does it without even trying to understand where he is or respect the local customs. The villagers' reaction completely changes after that. The atmosphere, which was already uncomfortable, turns openly hostile. And, well, the result couldn't really be anything else.
Yeah, great.
The college students. In Tucker and Dale vs. Evil, we follow Tucker and Dale, two simple guys from the countryside who just want to enjoy a few relaxing days at a cabin in the woods. The problem begins when a group of college students sees them for the first time at a gas station. Because Tucker and Dale look exactly like stereotypical creepy hillbillies from horror movies, the students instantly assume the two are psychotic killers. And from that point on, everything becomes a non-stop chain of ridiculous misunderstandings. After Allison, one of the girls, almost drowns and Tucker and Dale rescue her, the college students panic and assume she's been kidnapped. But instead of calling for help or trying to understand what's actually happening, they decide to invade the guy's property completely unprepared. And that's when the movie basically turns into a parody of horror cliches. Every rescue attempt ends horribly because the students themselves accidentally caused the disasters while panicking. There are characters running irrationally, throwing themselves into danger for no reason, and making decisions so absurd they almost feel like jokes. And that's exactly what makes the movie so funny. Instead of the hillbillies being the villains, the story shows that the students' prejudice and panic are the real problem. And honestly, very few groups of characters have managed to die so much purely because of a lack of calm and common sense. The couple. In the 2022 movie Speak No Evil, the thing that stands out the most isn't even the villain or the suspense itself, but the absurd way Ben and Louise ignore obvious danger signs. The story starts with the Danish couple meeting a Dutch family during a vacation. Everything seems like a casual and friendly encounter. They talk about life, work, and eventually accept an invitation to spend the weekend at the other family's house. And that's already where the problem begins. From the start, there are small inconsistencies in the host's behavior, subtle lies, and uncomfortable attitudes. But Ben and Louise keep accepting all of it just to avoid looking rude. Once they arrive at the house, things become even stranger. Patrick's behavior starts crossing every reasonable boundary, especially regarding Louise's discomfort and the household rules. Even then, the couple insists on staying polite, as if saying no would somehow be more dangerous than the actual situation. The most frustrating moment comes when they finally decide to leave during the night. Everything seems solved until they come back. They literally return to the host's house just to retrieve their daughter's forgotten stuffed toy. And that tiny detail completely changes the course of the story. From that point on, they fall back into the couple's emotional manipulation and lose any real chance of escape. What's interesting is that the movie doesn't present this as classic stupidity, but as extreme passiveness. And that's exactly why the audience feels so uncomfortable. You're basically watching two people keep saying yes while everything around them screams run. And of course, the ending couldn't really be anything else. The couple dies, and their daughter stays with the hosts. The Gen Z group. Bodies, Bodies, Bodies follows a group of rich young friends trapped inside a mansion during a storm. No internet, no electricity, and way too much alcohol. To pass the time, they start playing a game called Bodies, 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 basically a murder hide-and-seek game. But things completely spiral out of control when one of them suddenly shows up dead, and instead of trying to calmly figure out what happened, everyone loses their minds. Their biggest mistake is simple. Nobody actually communicates properly. Instead of checking clues or trying to help each other, the group immediately starts pointing guns, screaming, and creating theories with absolutely no proof. Any weird behavior instantly becomes enough reason for accusations. And because nobody trusts anyone, the situation gets worse incredibly fast. Like when the group kills Greg's character without a single piece of evidence that he was the murderer, only to later realize the guy was completely innocent. The consequences keep getting worse and worse. People die during impulsive fights, others get thrown out of the house in the middle of the storm, and friendships completely fall apart because of secrets and hysterical accusations. The entire chaos happens simply because nobody stops for 2 minutes to think rationally. And then comes the plot twist. At the end, they discover the first death wasn't even a murder. The guy literally tried opening a bottle with a sword while recording a video for social media, and died in a ridiculously stupid accident. The final robbery. In Don't Breathe, Money is basically the perfect example of too much confidence and not enough brains. He's part of a trio of young thieves breaking into houses around Detroit looking for easy money. When they discover a blind veteran supposedly hiding a huge amount of cash, Money immediately assumes the robbery will be simple. Isolated house, defenseless, target, easy money. But he completely ignores the most important detail. The man is not helpless. Even with obvious danger signs everywhere, Money keeps pushing the plan forward. He enters the house armed but without any strategy besides intimidation. The problem is that the house works like an environment where silence is everything. Any noise immediately reveals their position, and Money completely ignores that.
Hey man, just chill, alright? Look,
His worst mistake is treating the homeowner like someone easy to control. Instead of being careful, he acts aggressively and impatiently, as if brute force could solve everything. But the movie flips that idea entirely. The more noise they make, the more vulnerable they become. What makes Don't Breathe interesting is how it reverses the usual horror logic. Here, the intruders are actually the prey, and Money perfectly represents the type of character who underestimates both the environment and the opponent purely because of ego. In the end, he pays for it quickly by getting killed by the old veteran. The beach. In Jaws, Mayor Larry Vaughn makes such terrible decisions that many people consider him more dangerous than the shark itself. The story begins when a young woman gets attacked on the beach in the small town of Amity Island. Police Chief Martin Brody immediately wants to close the beaches, but Vaughn panics over the possibility of losing tourist money during summer season. To him, empty beaches mean economic disaster. The problem is that literally everyone keeps warning the mayor about the danger. Oceanographer Matt Hooper confirms the attack was caused by a massive shark, but Vaughn keeps downplaying the situation. He pressures authorities, ignores reports, and tries convincing the public that everything is under control. His worst decision comes during the 4th of July holiday.
Christ's sake, tomorrow's the 4th of July, and we will be open for business.
Even with more attacks happening, Vaughn keeps the beaches open so tourists won't panic. And of course, it ends horribly. The movie basically turns his stubbornness into a ticking time bomb. Another absurd moment happens when fishermen catch a smaller shark, and the mayor instantly declares victory without even checking whether that shark was truly responsible for the attacks. Hooper even warns him that the shark's size doesn't match the wounds found on the victims, but Vaughn chooses to believe the most convenient solution. The character became so famous that people even created the term Mayor Vaughn syndrome, used to describe leaders who ignore obvious crises to protect the economy or public image. And as ridiculous as it sounds, we all know that happens constantly in real life. On screen right now is a video where we show the smartest decisions in horror movies. Click and watch it. See you there.